welcome to another North Wales side-by-side video. This is an introduction to a couple of videos I'm going to be doing in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be doing Barnet coil sprung pressure plate conversion on my 2016 YXZ, and whilst I'm in the clutch I'm going to pull the original clutch out that's now done 4,000 miles, and I'm going to put brand new friction plates in as well. Soon as this clutch pack has done 4,000 miles. I'm going to be honest, it doesn't look burnt or damaged. We'll pull it apart. Some of these plates have blued a little bit and they're really dry. That plate's got hot. The frictions look good. I don't think much to the steels though, they're really blue. That steel plate is bone dry. Absolutely bone dry. That plate is bone dry. I don't think there's any oil got to the middle of this clutch. Yeah, that one's bone dry as well. Considering how dry this clutch pack is, I'm surprised that one's dry. These plates are so dry. I've just noticed now something different on that steel. There's no dimples in it. It is totally flat on both sides. Yet the friction is good. That one's got dimples on it. It is wearing. Now we're onto the small plates now. They're okay. Does have the judders in. I think I bought this at 900 miles. I've now got 4,000 miles on it. I think somebody's put a clutch in this at some stage, because they haven't put the wire ring back on when they put it all back together. I think some of the steels are in a bad way. That's the last one. To be honest, all the friction plates are pretty good. There is some damage on this basket, and I think that's because they've put the judders in and they haven't put the spring in. Where this goes into the basket, we just bin these metals in here. I was missing the thrust plate, it just wasn't in. The basket was just in there. That's how it sat. So what that's done, if you can see, in this here, it's been rubbing on this face, and it had gouged all that up, so I've cleaned that up. But it didn't explain why I hadn't got the thrust washer in there. And the other thing I was missing, that's the clutch plunger that sits into the back of the pressure plate. There's meant to be a ball bearing that goes on this face to push onto the push rod that goes to the slave cylinder. Ball bearing was also missing, but I'm thinking because the thrust plate wasn't in it, it made the difference up. Anyhow, it's a Yamaha, and I've ripped enough Yamaha engines apart over the years. In my stash of old engines and engine bits, I found a thrust plate. And that's meant to go in there, and that's meant to sit on there, and as you can see, it now spins, which it didn't do before. So I take that back out, it spins, but you can hear it rubbing. So that thrust plate is very, very important. I've started by locating every single metal plate where it is in the basket or in the hub, and giving each single metal plate a hole all the way round. So I've got 10 holes, and that's one for every single individual plate. Theory in that clutch, and the clutch spreads, the oil now can come up through them holes and get to the friction plates. But being as the metals don't actually sit on the bottom of the groove, the oil's going to be coming up through them all the time. And then I've put 4 holes in that groove, missed one. I've put 4 holes in that groove. That one at the bottom goes in at an angle so it comes out in the web, and they all align with metals again. I've gone 4 in that groove, 3 in that groove, 4 in that groove, and we're back to the single. That's 28 oil holes. So if I hold it up to the light, you can see how much oil I'm going to be getting through that hob. That should make sure the entire pack always stays wet. What I'm going to be putting into my Yamaha is full barnet, friction and steel. So my first plate's going to be a friction. With no thrust washers in it. Don't worry, it's not going together dry, it is all going to be soaked before I finally put it in the Yamaha. For now, I just want to build the pack up. Make sure everything is right. That's the last steel. That's how it's going to stack when it goes back in. I do want to try the pressure plate on top and see what it all looks like. Let me just move, yeah. Oh, hello and welcome from the YXZ. I've got the clutch in. It's fitted and it's actually working. I've had a little discovery tonight. In the last video I told you that the ball bearing was missing behind the plunger. Well, I got a new one today and I put it in, put the plunger back in, and I couldn't get the pressure plate up to the plate. So I thought, I'm not able to push against the hydraulics. Even with the springs on, it wouldn't go back far enough. So I took the slave cylinder off and it went back and clamped the plates. So I went to put the slave cylinder back on and I couldn't get the slave cylinder on. So I've taken the ball bearing out again now, because it's the only way. It wasn't there when I pulled it apart. It's the only way I can get the clutch to work. Oh, hello, welcome to a North Wales side-by-side video. I'm back on the clutch. If you've watched the other videos, you'll know I pulled my clutch apart because it was juddering and I wanted to know why. So pulled it apart, took the pressure plate off, pulled the plunger out. No ball bearing came out. So the plunger came out, then this big rod came out, and the plunger was direct on the end of this big rod, which according to Yamaha should have a ball bearing. So ordered a ball bearing. Then I spun the 30mm nut off the hub, pulled the hub out with the pack, put it to one side. Then I took the basket out and then started to inspect the clutch. But I found the conical washer behind the basket, but I couldn't find the spacer. because it's a step spacer and it's meant to have the small diameter against the conical washer and the big diameter against the basket. Well, somebody in their infinite wisdom had reversed it, put the small diameter up inside the basket. So I rectified that problem, then looked at the back of the basket where the hub goes against. There was no thrust washer. Looked on the back of the hub, no thrust washer. Found another thrust washer of the right part number in a bin of parts I've got up in the loft. So reassembled it, put the new clutch pack in, put the new pressure plate on, went to put the slave cylinder back on, this little guy here, and he wouldn't go anywhere near the gearbox. There is quite a bit of resistance against that spring, but you can push it in. And what it was doing, it was bottoming that out, and as I tightened the screws up and pushed it into the gearbox, it was pushing this rod through up against the ball bearing, against the plunger, and it was opening the pressure plate, so it was never going to drive. So then thought, maybe I've got a fluid lock in the hydraulic system and it's not returning the fluid out of the cylinder. So I cracked the bleed nipple, made no difference. So I pulled the cylinder apart, no problems with the cylinder. Tried putting it together without the ball bearing again, it all went together and the clutch worked. That led me to one conclusion. That rod, for some reason, is too long. I can't find a dimension anywhere off Yamaha or any of the manuals, and I can't get any information on its length. So what I've done is I've deducted the diameter of the bearing off this end, put the shape back on the end of it, so that is now 9mm shorter than it used to be. So theoretically, when I put that in, put the slave on, I should have a clutch once I've bled it, because all I've done is deducted the bearing size, the ball bearing, off this rod. The ball bearing's 8.6, I've taken 9 off it, so I've just allowed for a little bit more free play than probably is necessary if I can get that on the pedal, but I'll find that out in a bit. Now I'll come back to you once I've put it together and see if it works. Right, we've filled the clutch fluid up now, we've bled the clutch, still got to put the interior in, but what I am happy to say is slave cylinder went on with just a slight bit of resistance. It's bled up really nice, I've pumped brand new fluid through it. That's the free play I've got in my clutch, and I've got a solid pedal, which is how it felt before I shortened the rod, but now I've got the ball bearing in. I can't try it now till Saturday. So I think if everything is hunky-dory, we've got a bled clutch, slave cylinder on, long push rod in, ball bearing, plunger, and behind the cover, brand new Barnett plates and Barnett steels and a 6-spring Barnett pressure plate. So it's Tuesday tonight. Can't fire it up at 11 o'clock at night, it's too noisy. I'll fire it up Saturday morning, check the clutch works, bleed the clutch one more time because I'm going to let it sit now for a couple of days. If there's any air bubbles in it, they'll work their way up to the master cylinder. And I think, hopefully, I am done. that was a very successful first ride with my freshly rebuilt gearbox and my new Barnet clutch. Very, very happy with it. Clutch is a bit like an on-off switch because the pedal's so heavy, but I'll get used to that in time. I've stalled it a fair few times, especially at road junctions, but we'll get around that problem. Anyway, thanks again for watching a North Wales side-by-side video.